Dear Rockstar, back again and with some more another cool peep. I almost said peeps. Ben, thank you for being with me.
Glad to be here.
Ben Hoyer, and I want to say from downtown Credo, but you do so much more than just one thing. It's hard for me to even say that, right?
Sure.
Sure, whatever. So, lots of people don't know about downtown Credo. You want to give them a little overview of what downtown Credo is?
Sure, yeah. Downtown Credo is a nonprofit that we started that tries to remind people that their quality of life is more tied to who they're becoming than what they have. And that if they become people of meaning, impact, and community, then no matter what they have, they'll like their lives better.
Oh, that's so deep. Okay, say the first part again to me.
Sure, your quality of life is more tied to who you're becoming than what you have. Yeah.
So walk us back. I don't know. What was life like for you when you were a kid or growing up? Like, there was a journey here,
Sure,
right?
yeah, probably. I don't know that I've ever put the journey tied it that far, but I grew up just in, like, outside of Orlando, in suburb, and one town my whole life.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, probably. I went to just all the same schools, went to school with kids all the way growing up, and then went to Florida State School for college, and just kind of went along, but always kind of, school was never hard for me, so it was never something I was really worried about, and always trying to figure out what was behind it, what was behind the grade, what was the extra motivating, what would get me to do the things I wanted to do. It kind of culminated in college when I started going to classes and couldn't get myself motivated to go to class.
Yeah. Been there.
Yeah. And so I said, I'm going to forget picking a major or a career and just pick classes that are interesting, because if the classes aren't interesting, I won't finish.
Steve Jobs, right?
I don't know. Is that what he says?
Well, he actually got out of Stanford and started taking classes on font and all these things just because he cared about it.
Right. Yeah.
So you start taking.
Yeah, I did
what
that.
kind
I
of
started
courses?
saying I have no way to predict, like, who I'll be 20 years from now, so I can't live my life trying to make 20-year future Ben happy. I have to, like, make who I am right now content and enjoyable and engaged and excited, and trust that if I'm engaged in life now, I will be 20 years from now, you know? And so I just took, like, philosophy and religion classes, and kind of, like, I got into a lot of postmodern theory, and not really knowing what I would do with it, but it was interesting stuff.
So letting desire or interest be your navigator for what you studied.
Was partly about, like, this decision not to micromanage my future, like, try and make decisions now predicting, oh, I'll like this job, so I'll go through this major, you know, or I want to make this much money over here, so then I'll make the decisions here and suffer through classes I don't like in order to get to that.
Really wise for that age. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
know,
like,
maybe.
right?
I think it's just like a short-term tolerance. Like, I wouldn't have survived, you know?
Well, see, I think that's it. You came up with a strategy that gave you the motivation to get through.
Right, that's right. And that's kind of like, I mean, jumping ahead maybe in the story, but, like, that was what led me to this kind of statement about anchoring Credo, was like having started down a road and being less than satisfied, and then looking at friends that were my age that had gone through school, gotten the job, maybe started to put together the family, had the house, and we're starting to look around and go, okay, now I just work this job until I retire. Like, and there was a level of dissatisfaction in their life, and the same thing was there in mine. And I started to think, well, the answer isn't a better job or a nicer car or a bigger house. It can't be that, because it's not making me happy now. Why would it make me happy then?
And there's social proof of it.
Yeah, and so then, okay, if it's not that, what is it? And it's like, wherever I go or whatever things I get, I carry the same person. It's like, if there's always a problem, then maybe you're the common denominator, right? So, like, if I can like who I am, then no matter what car I'm driving or what size house I am or what my family looks like, I'll be happy, I'll be content. So
if I can like who I am.
Yeah.
What have you learned about that?
Well, I just kind of made a decision that, like, if I am this kind of person, a person of meaning, impact, and community, there's nothing magic about those words.
I'm just going to be that.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, I get to decide what would I like, who would I like to be, what kind of person would I like to be. Well, I'd like to be a person with meaning, impact, and community. Cool, how am I going to do that? And then it was just like, then it's just problem solving from there, right?
Will you tell me what happened after that?
Well, then I started like Google searching how to serve a city. If I'm going to be a person of impact, I should start with making impact on my city and the place around me. And I started researching how you serve well, and then looking at places, who could I partner and help out. And then, okay, cool, I got an idea. How could I bring people with me? And so calling my friends to do, what is my skill set? How can I serve best?
So give me, how did it start then? Like, what was your first, there an actual?
Yeah, so literally, like, I did a Google search to find places to serve in Orlando.
Places to serve?
Yeah, like, okay, places to serve in Orlando. And like a lot of ones came up that just didn't resonate with me. I wanted to be a person of impact and meaning, but like I wasn't terribly altruistic. Something had to hit, right? So just because people were helping folks that didn't have a place to live didn't mean I wanted to go to the homeless shelter and serve soup. So I wanted to do something I was actually passionate about. And I saw a Boys and Girls Club at the Coalition for the Homeless, and I thought, these kids are living at the Coalition and it's not their fault. So I just went into the Boys and Girls Club and said, hey, how can I help you? And they kind of laughed at me and said, well, what can you do? I said, well, what do you need? Here's my best use of me. Let me plan something for you. Best use of me is not an hour here or an hour there. I'm not a great mentor, but I can plan something and execute an event for you. So give me an event to plan. And then then I brought my friends along. We planned their end of summer party. Built lawn games for them, made some competitions, got some donated prizes for them. And then I realized, oh man, nobody is really kind of challenging folks to think about substantially who they're becoming. And
who they're becoming.
Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, how would we do that? How would we brand that? Who's the market that would resonate strongly with that? What other brands is that demographic resonating with? What can I learn from them?
Yeah.
So then it was like finding other cause-based nonprofits like Charity Water or To Write Love on Her Arms or Falling Whistles or Invisible Children.
Yep.
Looking at those demographics, figuring out what those companies valued, and then building a nonprofit like that. Right?
Well, yeah, you button it up like that. It probably wasn't quite as neat and clean.
Right. Yeah, probably.
So when did you start Downtown Credo?
Like what year?
Yeah,
I think it was 2010. I always have trouble
that,
remembering.
And that was your process. What did it first start as?
Like, that was the first project we did.
Okay, so that was the first project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I said, okay, if I'm going to invite more people, I need more than just one partner because I'm not going to come up with enough projects for. So then I went to a friend who had reviewed like 125 nonprofits in town and asked him which were the most substantial or best. Built a website, recruited a board, then went to those nonprofits and said, what are you not doing that you'd like to be doing?
What an incredible question. What are you not doing that you want to be doing?
Yeah, and then whatever they told me, I said, cool, I'll do it. So like the Green Up Orlando.
And then you go to the other side.
And then I go, okay guys, here's what we got to do. Let's problem solve and figure out how to do this for them.
And in a lot of people's head, or maybe only mine, immediately I'm thinking the money thing. How did you deal with that piece in all of this?
Well, you just do stuff without money.
Because
you don't have any money. So, but then I needed to get some. Then I did think, in order for this thing to work long term, I have to have a way to fund it. I'm not great at raising money, so then it was like, what could we sell that also advances the mission? And like, what could we do? And partly, I wanted to show people that it was the local and global are connected in our world, and so you'll like yourself better when you're able to conceive of yourself as a person of global impact, that there's no problem too big. And so I had a friend of a friend who was already bringing this coffee in and from growers that he would go down and spend time with every year. And so we went with him, me and a couple board members, to Guatemala, met the coffee growers, found out that what he said was happening on the ground actually was happening, then brought it back and started opening a coffee shop and having people name their price. It was like, I thought that if we did it right, the coffee shop ought to be able to fund the nonprofit. Yeah.
How has that worked out?
Great. Yeah, I mean, it's taken some time, and you work for free and you hustle on both ends of the thing. But it's worked out better than I thought it would. I mean, at several phases I've thought, well, this is the most we're going to be able to get out of this. And then a year from now, we're doing twice that. And so, and we're...
Because now you have how many?
We're about to open our third
third
coffee shop. Yeah, right. And we're in conversations for maybe one more, which would be awesome.
And so is that the primary economic engine for your social outreach?
Yeah, I mean, we're better than 90% supported by revenue that comes in through the coffee shops.
Okay, and what, do you give that a certain term? I know everyone has different words for...
Give what?
Is that social business? Is that social entrepreneurship? I mean, does it need to have a title, but how do you define this?
I just call it social enterprise.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's the best term or not, but it's one that I use. So, like, I'll use that to define any organization, whether they're for-profit or non-profit, that exists to solve a real social, economic, or environmental problem. So the point of the organization has to be to solve that problem. Then they could be for-profit or non-profit, and then they have to have an earned income stream.
An earned
Yeah, so not a traditional nonprofit that's only doing fundraising and stuff, that wouldn't qualify.
Right.
But it's interesting, like, because social enterprise becomes a hot button conversation. Everybody wants to talk about social enterprise, but like we were talking about, the nonprofit hospitals have been social enterprises for a long time.
Right, early schools.
Yeah,
right?
or orchestras have been social enterprises for a long time. They sell tickets in order to accomplish their mission.
Right.
Yeah.
What have you learned? What have been the biggest learnings when you look at back now in terms of starting and growing something of impact?
Well, I think like you can't underestimate the importance of believing the thing that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so like I talk about this with people a lot. Like if it's a nice idea, it's not enough to kind of propel you through the hard work of starting something and recruiting other people to come along with you. I think that maybe if you have like a nice idea for a more traditional business, maybe you could make it work, because you can get investor capital quickly. But if you want to start a social enterprise, it has a slower return. It's going to be harder to get investors. Like, it has to be a core belief to animate and push you through the work of getting it up off the ground. And so that's been the fun thing for me, is like to really be animated by this mission that no matter how much stuff you have, you'll like your life better if you live it with meaning, impact, and community.
Say your credo again. I got to get it all the way in my psyche.
Well, yeah, so the credo is like this longer statement of belief around meaning, impact, and community. But the organization exists to remind people that your quality of life is more tied to who you're becoming than what you have. And if you become people of meaning, impact, and community, then no matter how much stuff you have, you'll like your life better.
So a major learning is that it's got to really be synced up with your purpose, your why.
Yeah, like personally, you got to really believe it.
What else have you learned about social impact, or that you would advise people or warn people about, right? Like,
well, the other thing I think is that sometimes people that are running kind of these social businesses forget the competitive advantage that their mission gives them. And so they drop that on the ground. They feel like they're not allowed to play with that belief or mission, right? But
they forget that it is their value proposition.
Yeah, and they feel like that's soft, or I can't bring that to the table in competitive business space, right? But I tell them, this is the most powerful thing that you have. This is your competitive advantage. No one else plays on this field. So when you go talk to investors, when you make sales pitches, you always start with this thing. I don't care how many times you feel like you've said it, it's compelling enough to mobilize you into this work. It will be compelling to the people sitting across from you. You cannot not say that. And so that's where, I mean, almost every conversation I have, I start it with, listen, your quality of life is more tied to who you're becoming than what you have.
And you capture us,
Yeah.
right? Because who's talking to us that way?
Right. And when you, this is the power of social business from a business perspective, is all of a sudden it's connected to this deep kind of universal why that grabs people and asks or invites them into something more than a business transaction.
It goes to our fundamental desire to be here for a meaningful reason, a purpose.
Yeah.
Like, and to matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think like that's where, I mean, we've talked about this some before, Pam, but like, I think the notion of the job of the consumer in capitalism is shifting. And so the best entrepreneurs will know that and adjust, right? So
Talk to us a little bit about that shift.
yeah, so I feel like I grew up like in junior achievement and stuff, learning that capitalism works because consumers will reward the companies that give them the thing they want at the cheapest price. And so that's why capitalism works, because it keeps businesses honest and produces what the consumers want at the most reasonable price. But I think the notion of who a consumer is or what their job is shifting from who can give me what I want at the lowest price to who can accomplish the thing that I want in the world and give me the product that I'd like.
Oh, that's huge. Who can accomplish what I care about in the world, and I can support them by buying the product or service.
Exactly. Like our dollars have to do more than one thing at this point, right? And consumers are realizing businesses ought to be able to do more than one thing with the dollars that I give them.
Yeah.
And so the smart entrepreneurs, I feel like, and investors going forward will start to see that from the bottom side of the capitalist system, it's shifting. And if they can learn how to honestly and authentically do more than one thing with their dollars, they're going to capture the consumers. Don't you think?
Yeah. No, for many, many reasons, right?
Yeah.
Going through this, navigating this, have you ever had a moment, is there a moment where you felt like giving up? Or your roughest moment? Can you take us to that story?
I mean, it's been interesting because for me, it's like as opportunities open, I've known very intuitively what were the right ones to take and what were not, to the point where it looked like there's no way I cannot do this. But
how do you know that?
I don't know.
Okay, you said very intuitively, and then you said you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know how.
I just know.
Like,
yeah,
and
that's
how
why
does
it's intuitive.
How does it present itself to you?
It seems overwhelmingly obvious I couldn't not do it. So the example is like, I was starting this nonprofit and running these projects, and I had built this coffee relationship. And so I was buying the coffee and then reselling it, right? And through website sales and person-to-person sales. And I had dreamed that maybe 5 years down the road, I'd have the money to open up a coffee shop. But through a kind of weird set of circumstances, I had the opportunity to get a building right away that would work for a coffee shop. I was working another job, like I had a full-time job, but this was coming to me. And I knew I could set up the coffee shop here, but I'd have to keep working the full-time job and run the coffee shop. But it was like very clear to me, like, yes, you take this opportunity, right? And I came home to tell my wife, we had 2 kids. She had just started going back to work, so she's about to start getting up and going to work. And I come back and tell her, hey, we didn't really have time to talk about this, but I committed to this building. I also can't pay staff, so I'm going to be opening it every day. I also think a coffee shop, if you're going to do it, ought to be open. So I'm leaving the house at 5:30 every morning because I'm going to open this coffee shop at 6:30 every morning. So when I tell the story, normally it's different from hers. It's like this crazy thing. And so then for 3 years worked for free for the coffee shop, just until we were able to stagger and move me to where we could start to pay me as executive director, and then was behind the counter for a little while longer.
See, this is what I don't think we talk about enough. Sometimes I think, people look out at everybody else's and they think, oh, they all got money and their on-ramp was just huge.
Right.
But the reality of sometimes how things get stitched together.
Yeah. No. I don't know how to start things with money. I've learned that. I know how to start things without money. I don't know what I would do if someone gave me money for an idea. Like, I think it would be...
and the key principles you've learned of starting things without money is?
Just hustle.
Hustle.
Yeah. You can figure anything out with a Google tutorial. Like...
Yeah, don't pay for anything, just figure it out.
Yeah. Don't pay for a
and
website.
Duct tape works.
Don't pay for
miracles.
plumbers. Don't, ask forgiveness rather than permission. Just go, right?
You live that though, right?
Oh, yeah, completely. I was with a staff person the other day, and we saw this little poster, and he saw it, and he's like, man, I feel like that's a saying you live by. And I turned over and looked at it, and it said, done is better than perfect. And I was like, abso-freaking-lutely. Done is better than perfect. Like, movement begets movement. You can always come back and get it better, but if you're waiting to get it right, you'll never get started, And that's the same thing with thinking about who you're becoming. That's one of the things I say, like, a life that you like almost always starts with steps so small they seem silly, right?
Jeanette Johnson said, success is like a million steps nowhere, and then you turn around and you realize how far you've come.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can't take a big step immediately without taking small steps towards it. You don't take big steps, you take a bunch of small steps. So yeah, I guess that's what you say.
Well, and I think and I even do it when I'm asking people questions. We break things down in terms of the 3 steps to greatness, or the 3 things you did and you got there. And it's just not that way.
No, that's right. It's not that way. Like, it takes, for me, I'm realizing now, 6 years into this project, that I frustrated with life, said, well, let me quit thinking about what job I ought to do and think about who I ought to become, because no matter what job I'm doing, I'm the same person in it. Okay.
But that is so radical. I mean, I just have to hold some space around that. Instead, because we've almost been socialized to think, almost being nervous or compulsive about the idea that this job has so much definition of us.
Yeah.
But if you can put space around that and say, what if we all cared more about who we are, who we're becoming, and who we will be on our last breath?
Yeah, right.
And that was the primary question.
Yes, we want to think about who we're becoming. It's more powerful if you're wanting a life that you like, because no matter what job that you end up in, you're the same person carrying it around, right? But then the idea that that's not an ethereal conversation. So it's not a spiritual in the sense that spiritual is divorced from practical. It's not merely a spiritual conversation.
Well, talk to us about that, because I know you have a deep spiritual practice.
Right.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so for me, when I say when I decided I wanted to be a person of impact, then it was okay, I'm going to walk into the Boys and Girls Club and organize their end of summer party. Right.
And that was how I did.
And that's impact, right? And then you have to fight the skepticism that this is a ridiculously small step and no one's going to know or care. It feels so insignificant. It feels silly. Yeah. And so over and over again, the next one was our local Green Up organization, Green Up Orlando, said we'd love it if you were able to kind of find people in this neighborhood to pick up trash along the side of the streets and in the parks, right? And so I'm doing neighborhood organizing basically in a neighborhood that I don't live in.
Right.
And mostly with kids picking up trash on Saturday mornings.
Yep.
And I would wake up on Saturday mornings and hope that it rained because I didn't want to go pick up trash in the neighborhood, and it wasn't fun.
I really want to be of impact, but I don't want to do this.
I don't want to do that. And so, it's that's where I say, if it's not a why that you deeply believe in, it won't push you through it.
Yeah.
If it's just a nice idea, it doesn't get you out of the house, right? And so it was like a firm conviction that I will become a person of impact. Impact will be a natural outgoing of who I am, and I'll like my life better that way. And so even when I don't want to do it in the moment, there's something, there's a conviction that runs deeper than that.
I
And-
have decided that this is who I'm going to be.
yeah, and if you can tie that to your like occupation, then that becomes very powerful. And so that's what I was able to do with Downtown Credo was go, this is at my core who I want to be, a person of meaning, impact, and community. How can I build stuff around this?
Yeah,
You
and now
know?
I'm going to make this.
Yeah, yeah.
What are some of your spiritual practices to stay centered, or how do you have spiritual practices?
Probably. I mean, for me, it's like there are scriptures connected to the people that I'm a part of, that I spend time in, so that I'm connected to something larger than myself through these scriptures. Or there's communities of people that challenge me, but also serve as family to me. So being rooted in this scripture that's deeper and older and more substantial than me, and then being connected to this group of people that's like broader and diverse and challenging towards me, and allows me to be myself, and then like being committed to the family that I have. So learning how to be a father to kids that are always changing, and learning how to be a husband to a wife.
What is something people probably don't know about you?
Probably lots.
Anything good?
I don't know. I gotten good at setting personal boundaries, because I wasn't always.
Really?
Yeah, and so like there's probably a lot of people don't know about me, but that's okay.
So tell us, when did boundaries come in and why?
Well, I mean, I grew up in a family that really highly valued taking care of other people. And so I learned very intuitively and naturally as a kid to care for other people. And so that wasn't really a problem until, like, standing behind the counter every day, there was a lot of people in my life.
With a lot of problems.
Yeah. And so, and then as staff grew, and like all of a sudden there's just a lot of people in my life. And when you carry other people's stuff, it weighs you down. And so I just had to learn how to like be kind, but the conversation goes to here. Because if I don't do that, I shut down, right?
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed.
It's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
What keeps you inspired?
Oh, that's an interesting one right now, especially because what has kept me inspired is like strong vision about where the next iteration or realization of this vision of Downtown Credo is. So what's the next thing it can become, right? So it started as a network of my friends serving partner charities, and then the dream was a shop that could be our headquarters, right? Ooh, and then it grew into that. Then that was kind of the fullness of it, and then the dream was like, how could we help other social enterprises get started? And then that was realized, and then okay, maybe we could add another shop, okay, and then that was realized, and maybe we could add a staff person. So I'm at a point right now where it's like I'm about to like kind of step away for me it's an extended period of time to really reevaluate which are the best opportunities, what's the next vision for who Downtown Credo becomes, and who I am for Downtown Credo. Like, what's my best role for the organization over the next 5-10 years or whatever.
What's your process of that kind of vision casting? What do you do to get
to
that high?
get the vision? Yeah, this is the first time I've had to do it. I've always just had the vision, right? And so it's like an interesting turn. So like, and probably it's a stage in entrepreneurs, and probably if I had studied it and knew, but I had an initial vision, right? That we're now past. We grew past the initial vision,
Right.
and while I'm down in it, there are lots of opportunities, and I said I know intuitively which opportunities. I don't know intuitively anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a warning sign for me. I've decided, oh man, I ought to know intuitively which are the best opportunities to take. That's how I've always made decisions, and I can't make decisions that way anymore. I've got to step away, and hopefully the intuition will resurface. If it doesn't, then I got to learn a different decision-making process. I don't know.
Yeah. So how long are you going away for?
Just 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should be.
It should be good. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
What do you think about the discussion we have? It seems like you have created, you're living this holistic life, right?
Right.
Like just decided who you be. What do you say? What's your response on this whole issue of balancing work and?
Yeah, I was
Life
talking
and
with
personal.
a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur, and I think if you're starting something, you have a different notion of that because it is so much your work and your life are the same,
Yeah.
right? So you don't have like work hours.
Right.
Not because you're overworking, just because you have to work when the work is there and you have to stop when you get a break. And so it doesn't fit into regular work day hours or work weeks and
Yeah.
stuff. So I think entrepreneurs have to be able to flex on that and know yourself so that you know what your markers of your running out of energy are. And remember that you can work tired, everything will just take you twice, 3 times as long.
Right.
Yeah. So as you learn, but the work-life balance thing, I think, starts to resolve itself if you give yourself permission to ask the question, who do I want to become? Rather than like, what do I want to get or what do I want to have? And those are different questions, right? And I think if we are uncritical, I used to talk about this a lot, that like the momentum of our life, like if you live in the States, right? The momentum of your life carries you towards entertainment, isolation,
Numbing.
materialism, right? And so if you do nothing, if you uncritically move through life, you will find yourself asking the questions, what can I have? What can I get?
Yeah.
And so if the work-life balance is a challenge, it's probably a driver for you is, what can I have? What can I get? What do I want?
Yeah.
And then I would challenge you to start to think about, well, who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? And then if you can ask that question, have the courage to ask that question, then take the next step and let that question drive practical choices. Then the work-life balance becomes less of a concern, because work ought to be able to fit inside of who I want to become, really, no matter what job we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you look at yourself, what do you feel like being a starter, an entrepreneur, and working in this space, what has changed the most about you?
Huh. So it's interesting, like right now the thing that's changed the most is my brain moves way faster than it used to.
You're
Yeah, like I'm like, and that's good and bad. It's good because I can hear someone, like I can hear a business idea and analyze it and redirect it very quickly.
Yeah.
I can assess possibility.
Super triage powers.
Yeah, just bop, bop, bop. But then, like, the downside of that is, like, it's can short circuit empathy, or and it's a shift for me in like who I was coming into this process.
Right, super empathetic.
Yeah, right. And so so that's part of my learning right now is to figure out, like, over the who am I for Downtown Credo in the long term. Am I that person? Am I somebody else? How are there ways to slow down the thinking and the kind of rapid fire idea structure?
What do you use right now to kind of calm your mind? I mean, how do you? I mean, I get it. I'm there with you. But
Yeah.
Is there anything you do that works?
Yeah. Well,
That sounded
it's
desperate.
so funny. Well, it's like I actually did start changing. I guess like for me, it's all connected, really physically. So like, I started riding my bike for my commute instead of.
I've seen you a couple times
Yeah.
coming into the coffee shop with
Yeah,
a bike.
yeah, because it does a lot of things. It like builds physical activity into my day. My phone is like all the way in my backpack, and put away. So like it's different from when I'm driving. I was telling someone else, nobody can get in my way when I'm on my bike. When I'm driving, I feel like everybody's always in my way. Like, why are you on the road? I'm trying to get somewhere.
Yeah, like super impatient.
Yeah, it's like, come on. And so there was a couple of weeks, a couple of months ago, where I couldn't ride my bike, and I found myself in a worse mood. And I realized not only did I not get that physical activity and put the phone down time, but I also would schedule more in my day because I thought, well, I'll just run over there with the car, and I was always 5 minutes late somewhere because I thought, well, I can get there quicker. And so the commuting on my bike and not having a car with me in the day changed the way that I schedule and the way that I interact in my day, and made me a little bit more sane, which is helpful.
Sane is helpful
Yeah.
on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's the one thing I hear you giving us is permission to like what we're doing. And I'm still
cool.
going back to that, right? Like
Yeah.
I almost don't know if that's the message I got growing up about work or life,
yeah.
right?
Right.
And that this do what you love and profit or whatever, but
Yeah.
that liking things, if we go back to your first story of you choosing classes by interest, it goes back to this idea that we've all been made very uniquely.
Right.
And that we almost have the GPS.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I do feel like for whatever reason, I don't know where it got put into me, but this idea that we can build a life that we like. So why wouldn't we, you know? Yeah, it hadn't occurred to me that people wouldn't have that. But yeah, for sure.
And that you have permission to build that life. And
Right.
then also you listen and intuitively know, of that interests me, that resonates with my soul, my sweet spot. I want to be a person of impact. That doesn't resonate at all. I would not like that, and you're fine to not do it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Like for me, that sounds really normal, but in a world that's so external,
Yeah, yeah,
it's really powerful. The GPS is inside of you,
yeah. I like it.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Besides the things you're working on at Credo, what's the one thing you'd like to change in the world? You
Sheesh.
can only have one.
I can only get one, huh?
So you can't change both presidential candidates.
Bummer. That would be
Right?
a good one.
Right?
I don't know. It can be anything.
Anything.
I would love it if like travel were free. I don't know if that's a real thing that you can do.
right?
But if I get to pick anything, I want like airfare to be complimentary for the world, right? So then we can go wherever we want without like having to figure out how we're gonna fund travel.
Yeah.
That'd be good, right?
That'd be good.
I'd
be
that.
down for that.
Yeah,
And it would change people's perspectives because the things that have impacted me the most,
yeah,
going to Asia or being in a small Thai village, I mean, just seeing life, sitting on the floor and having dinner, and just these moments of moving further away from the accelerated American way of living,
right.
just brings a whole new awareness, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like it.
So, where do we catch up with you online? How do we find you online? Or
Oh, well, so I blog some for Downtown Credo. That's
Okay.
that's at downtowncredo.com.
okay.
And then I'm on the socials. You
With
can find
what's
me.
your handle?
Probably Ben David Hoyer.
Ben David Hoyer.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
That's my name.
Probably, unless in
That's
the
on
3
Twitter. I don't know what it is on Instagram. I never look at it. I set it up and then I
Which one do you use? Social? Do you use?
I look at Instagram the most. I don't
Okay.
really use
So
Twitter or
Instagram
Facebook.
is the way to catch up with you.
Yeah.
If you want to talk social
That's
business.
a good idea, yeah.
As we're starting to wrap up, is there something else you'd like to say, or something to leave us with, or to say to starters and makers?
No, I mean, I think that you pulled it out. I mean, I kind of have a one lane, you know, like, so I realized to play in my lane, and my lane is like, you have to believe in the thing that you're doing if you want to start something, like, and so show me how you believe in it, and then we can start to analyze your possibility for success, you know. So that's what I'd say to starters.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Deep conversation.